Hi, thank you so much for your remarks today. I actually was lucky enough to work on a related project to the Agricultural Transformation Agency in Ethiopia this summer, and so I had a question about that. Basically, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you solve sort of the big coordination problems in some of these economies where you want to increase agricultural crop productivity first, but then you have nowhere to store it, but then there's no reason to build more storage if you have no more crops, and sort of how you get that started. Thank you.
Yeah, Ethiopia is a very interesting case because it has more food insecure people who need food aid than any country in the world. They're up in an area where the rains often fail, up in the Sahel. And fortunately, their leader, President Melez, decided that he needed to raise agricultural productivity. And the way their system worked in terms of getting new seeds introduced, how those seeds were priced, how you would buy fertilizer, how you would educate farmers, their agriculture system was not working. And he was very nice and turned to our foundation and said, okay, what should we be doing different? And we went in, looked at it, and recommended the creation of a group called the Agricultural Transformation Agency. One of our people who happened to be originally from Ethiopia moved to run that. And now we have a team of people, mostly expats from Ethiopia, that are over there on an ongoing basis. And it's really exciting because the things they had messed up in terms of fertilizer distribution, farmer education, not using the latest varieties of the crops, those things, you get those out there, and for the food you eat yourself, it's a lot better. And then you have people come in to do the post-harvest things. Now, they have some regulatory things that have made people come in to do those things a little harder than they should, and so that's kind of their next chapter, is allowing private seed companies in a more open way and letting the post-processing investors come in a better way. There's a few examples where that's worked, and so he and I met for a couple hours last week, and he's always interested and open-minded, so that's the next chapter. But it's a very exciting thing. Agricultural productivity will go up faster in Ethiopia from a very low level than in almost any country over the next 3 or 4 years as they fix these key bottlenecks.
How about over here?
So I was wondering, with international donations shrinking and the obvious need to make more efficient use of available funds, what role does the foundation see for economic evaluation of programs, and how do you choose between all the different options available to make sure that you get the most benefits for the populations that you're interested in helping?
Yeah, for us, because a lot of what we do is global health, there is a pretty clear metric, that is the number of kids who die and the number of kids who, when they reach age 5, have had their brain development severely damaged. And although the first figure has been easier to measure, now we're actually getting a really good handle on the second figure as well. And so we go in and say, hey, if we can't, for every $2,000 we spend, we can't save a life, it's not a good project for us, because we know how to save lives for $2,000 per life, either getting new vaccines in, educating mothers, and that's our threshold. And so we get a lot of nice suggestions about programs. And you can't, in the rich world, you cannot spend $2,000 and save a life. I mean, if you can find a project to spend $2 million and save a life, that's considered a really good thing. So these lives are being viewed as being worth less than 1% of a life in the rich world. That's why, when you say all lives have equal value, you could say how far is the world along towards being willing to expend for lives in poor countries this type of money, and of course it's catalytic for other things. When you get outside of health, then the metrics get tougher. Like we do digital money. In Kenya, we help this thing called M-Pesa. We're doing that in other countries. The view is that can support income support programs, can make the government way more efficient, but the actual proof of that isn't there because we don't have a case where we did a country with it and a country without it. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on what we call reinventing the toilet. So we're going to create toilets that don't require flush water that are as good in terms of appearance and smell as the gold standard, which is a flush toilet. I can't prove to you that, that's, we haven't done a great comparison. But when fixed R&D dollars just aren't there, nobody was spending money on that. Toilets are, if you want to go into that field, wow, it's wide open. And it needs to be done, even for middle income. So we have some things that we're not that numeric on in terms of what we pick at the top level. Then within those programs, we try to be very numeric. So when we do crop improvement, coffee, dairy, maize, we have a goal to triple productivity in Africa. Over 20 years, African farmer productivity will triple. And unless we're on a path to do that, built up from each crop, each country, each plan, then we're going to change our strategy. So we tend to be the most numeric in the field, and the field is becoming more numeric.
So let me ask a question that's come in on the web. We're streaming this, Bill. Do you think that's what's really changed? You gave an optimistic picture of progress here after many years of lack of progress. Is that the thing that's changed, more quantitative? You think the NGOs are operating differently? What do you think of the key factors?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's been no progress. In fact, that's one of the things that, because the appeal to people of, please give your money or please have governments give money, it's often the worst conditions in Africa are held up. And so the fact that nutrition, literacy, life expectancy has improved, AIDS being kind of a footnote where in some countries those things have gone down. But other than that, Africa's improved a lot. And so, so people were doing some reasonable things. The field is a lot smarter today, and we have the leverage of the genomics revolution, the mobile phone revolution. Aid is much higher today than it has been. Now, there's a risk it's going to go down, but the United States aid for AIDS drugs is over $6 billion a year. Until the Bush presidency, that was absolutely zero. And so it's the biggest increase in U.S. aid that there's ever been. It's under attack right now. We hope it's pretty important that be preserved. So yes, I think the field is a lot smarter today, but the science also gives us much better tools.
Yeah. Okay, how about over here?
So going back to the question before President Hennessy's, so if you have a bunch of interventions that do kind of hit your threshold of $2,000 per life saved, how would you prioritize between them? So you had mentioned with HIV, circumcision, 60% effective at preventing HIV acquisition, but pre-exposure prophylaxis in discordant heterosexual couples is also more than 60% effective, is being shown in studies now. So if you have these different interventions, do you just look at cost effectiveness, or do you look at feasibility of scale up, or what are the factors that you consider?